one of the most important things that you kind of need to look at really is finding something that you really, really enjoy and something that you think you can do for years and years and years.
Hi everyone, welcome back to episode 3. This is Getting Amongst It. Joining me today is Niamh Drohan, a female bodybuilder, where we talk about her life and all things involved in female bodybuilding. Once again, you can catch me on our Instagram page at Getting Amongst It. That's GettingAmongstIt. That's Getting Amongst It. And you can catch Niamh's page at Niamh_Dro_. That's NIAMH_DRO_ to follow up from our conversation today. Let's get amongst it. Hi Niamh, how are you?
Not too bad. How are you?
Thanks for joining me.
No problem at all.
Just introduce yourself and how people can get in contact with you.
Okay, so I'm Niamh Drohan. I'm originally from Dungarvan in County Waterford, but I've been living here now for the last 4 years in Dublin.
How are you finding the old city?
Yeah, it's fine. I'm nearly a native now. Know my way around the place well enough, I think. So yeah. And also, so you can get in contact with me on my Instagram. So it's just Niamh_Dro_.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
So Niamh, little bit about your background and how did you actually start training for bodybuilding? Takes back to the start.
The very
start.
So we'll go way back to the start here. So I started, I suppose just as a kid, I was always very active. I was, one of those, just did everything. So cross country running, sprints, Gaelic football, basically as many things I could make my parents drag me along to as possible.
So what was your first sport?
It was running. So it was sprints, sprints, hurdles, and just long jump as well. So it was all like track and field stuff. That's what I really, really liked. I was always very competitive, always very kind of driven and everything. Was one of those people that sulk when I lost, and
really took it to heart.
Yeah, very personal.
Well, now everybody gets participation medals now, so it's not so bad.
But I wanted to win always. So after that, then I kind of until I was like about 12 or 13, I was very active, always playing sports, very competitive. But then kind of lost my way for a couple of years. Then after that, I was like 12 or 13, I think, and my parents separated, and I just went through one of those weird phases you go through as a kid, and I didn't want to do anything, and I just was like, I just stopped playing all sports and everything, and didn't like revisit anything again until I was about 15 or 16. So
just trying to find yourself as such.
Yeah, I think I actually I was afraid. I think I didn't want to go to any places where I would meet kids who wouldn't have known that my parents weren't together anymore. In case, and it wasn't even that they were going to ask me about it. It was that I just was kind of uncomfortable with them knowing. I suppose I think it wasn't as common in Ireland then as it is now. So it's just one of those things when you're a kid. You're like, I don't want to face anybody who knows this situation or whatever. So. Yeah. I kind of, I took a break then until I was about 15 or 16, and I went back I never went back to running. I did go back to running again, but long distance. But I actually took up kickboxing when I was about 15 or 16.
Very good.
So yeah, it was definitely, I actually still to this day, I would probably say that I've never found a sport in terms of adrenaline and the kind of the feeling that you get, just being in the ring and everything. I obviously, because I'm competitive, it wasn't long before I decided that I wanted to fight as well. So I think I had about 6 or 8 fights.
Really?
In the course of 6 or 8, maybe. Yeah, 6. I'd say it was actually closer to 6. But yeah, it took me a while now to build up to that, just because it's one of those things like, you have to learn the technique from scratch, and it actually takes so long, and it takes so much practice or whatever to just get to yourself, even to have a standard where you might be able to step in a ring and fight other people. It took a while, but it was probably like in terms of any sport I've done, like just for the adrenaline and the rush, and it's an exhaustion I've never felt in any other sport. But I did it on and off for 5 or 6 years. And
were you in the weight room at this time?
No. I actually, like, it's mad really. I like a lot of it is just, it's a lot of explosive training, because what you're trying to do really is, I suppose, adapt your training for like a fight scenario. So, it's like, a lot of like, you know, plyometrics. It's like a lot of circuits, you know, it's like, I suppose, trying to build like explosive power. So it's like you would work in short bursts as opposed to, you know, like something like weight training really, unless it's a specific strength and conditioning program, you know, like a general weight, like, you know, a me doing shoulders and arms and focusing on contracting my biceps or something is not going to make me a better fighter, you know. So it's it's it was a different style of training, but I did it on and off for 5 or 6 years. I took a break again in the middle of that, because I went to college and just did the college thing of, you know, professional drinking and no activities, pasta and pizza diet. So
chips at 4 a.m.
Yeah, I got to a point where it's like, you know, I think people talk about it anyway, and it's like the fresher 14, you know, it's like get into your first year of college and put on a stone. I think I put on a stone and some.
Really?
Yeah. So I got to a point where I was just not very comfortable with my weight, my physique and everything. I was like, okay, I need to do something about this, because I suppose, you know, it's one of those things. I think a lot of people get to a point where they're uncomfortable, but it's actually starting that process. It's admitting to yourself that you're not happy, and also admitting that you need to do something about it.
What made you come to that one? Because a lot of people start blaming everything else.
No, I think it was just seeing photographs of myself.
Okay.
Like I actually think I was like a super vetter of photographs on Facebook, you know, because it was obviously it was that time where like people could tag you and you didn't have to review them, so it was just you're tagged in all these photographs, and I was like I saw them and I can't even explain it, but it's like you look at yourself in the mirror and you don't think you look that bad, but then it's like when you see a photograph, I know like photography and film, you know, like but the camera doesn't really lie either. So I had seen photographs of myself and I was like, no, this is enough now. This is like, I'm just uncomfortable, and I just decided, I was like, I need to do something about this, and that was kind of it. Then I think I'm probably one of those type of people where it's like, you know, when you make a decision about something, it becomes very like absolute, you know. It's like you make that decision and then you just see it through. So that was a kind of in the summer of my second year on my first year of college. I actually went back to kickboxing with my tail between my legs. I knew I needed something like kind of high intensity and probably just needed to sweat, but at this time I think I was quite like not very knowledgeable about nutrition or anything like that. So I just thought that the solution would be to like eat as little as possible, you know. Like I think I was eating like turkey slices and just like I had no idea. I was basically like starving myself, but didn't really realize it. But
so we'll move on then, just to say that so when you first started entering the weight room, were you lifting and then not having the diet witch at the same time?
I'd say I didn't actually kind of go and like, you know, start weight training for another couple of years after this. I had kind of dabbled in after kickboxing. I kind of decided I wanted to do something else. It was actually from like training for the fights. I was doing a lot of running to make weights for fights and stuff. So I was like, kind of like this long distance running, and then I did that for a while. Did some triathlons and everything, and then it was actually just injuries and everything that kind of forced me into the gym first. It was and the other thing was I had obviously like lost a lot of weight, and I was was starting to look a bit like, you know, like when people have lost like, you know, a lot of weight, they look a bit stringy or something like that.
It goes in the face first, doesn't it? So.
It was like there was like the face, it was like my arms, and I had literally no arse whatsoever. Like from the side, I was like just you know. So like it was like I was thin, but like it wasn't like an in shape kind of thing. You know, it was just like it's just somebody who's probably. And
you came to these realizations yourself.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I think
you didn't have anyone saying you need to.
No, like I think most, like I think Ireland has become a lot more like, you know, like aesthetically aware, I suppose, you know, and people have become a lot more, you know, like I think a couple of years ago, even like someone being thin was considered in shape, but like there's you know, like there's been there's a vast difference now in, you know, like it's not like being thin isn't enough anymore. You know, it's nearly like everybody wants that like hourglass silhouette or whatever. So at the time, I think I remember people were like, geez, you've lost some amount of weight, you know, but I think I just got to a point where I was like, I just wanted to like have a bit more shape to myself or whatever, and just wanted to look a little bit more like muscly or something. I wanted to actually just look a little more, actually, I think I'll use the word that I wanted to look more toned. So that's why I wanted it. So that's kind of why I initially started weightlifting and everything. So
when you did start your weightlifting, what was the best advice you were given?
You know, I don't think I really got any advice. What I got more than anything was I was just going out with a guy who was kind of interested in it or whatever. So I had no idea how to like do any weights or whatever. I think I'd actually gone when I was in college. I had made one of the lads I was living with, he was actually he was doing sports science in UL. So
brilliant.
I made him bring me to the gym, and I had done so he had kind of showed me, you know, squats. I think I had mastered squats, and then I had no idea about anything else. I only knew how to squat actually. And I think I had I think basically the guy I was going out with at the time probably showed me a little bit more about just like, you know, shoulder pressing and biceps, and I didn't really want to train arms. That was the thing. So but I don't know why, but I wanted to train shoulders, but I didn't want to train arms or whatever. Cool. So and then like back training and everything. But even then, I think my understanding of it all was very limited. Like it was only like, I would say that I probably prepped for my first show like not really knowing how to deadlift properly, and definitely not knowing how to like engage my lats or contract my lats for any kind of back training or anything. Like I think I'm not going to say I was like, you know, like mad swinging the exercises or whatever, but I definitely, what has probably improved more than anything else in the last 3 years is my understanding of like my body and the exercises, and I suppose just being in tune with the weights and connecting with the right muscle groups, you know. Okay. Yeah.
Very, very good. And so a leading question would be then, what should the first lessons training programs girls or / women should do when they're being first introduced to weight training? What should they need to kind of learn first?
Well, I would probably always say, and I think like, you know, one of the things at the moment is that there's so much information around training for women around, you know, and it's like, obviously what has really come to the fore in the last couple of years is like this obsession with female glute training or whatever, you know. It's like everybody wants like a Kim Kardashian arse. Like,
don't do that.
You know, but it's like not so much Kim Kardashian, but you know, like there is kind of, I think it's like with the emergence of like, probably like social media and Instagram or whatever, there's kind of like an ideal being kind of painted where it's like, you know, a girl with like, kind of toned shoulders, tiny waist, and kind of like a big arse. So obviously glute training has become way more, you know, there's like huge focus on it now for girls. But like, you know, and there's a lot of girls who definitely didn't get the glutes they have by doing their, you know, like just accessory work or whatever. What I would always say, I think, is with any training program, I think the best thing that anybody can ever do is to just learn all of your basic compound movements, know them really, really well. You know, like get to a point where you're comfortable doing like squats, deadlifts, even, you know, like even branch out into a variations, or, you know, there's variations of your compound movements, but, you know, definitely for your legs, if you can master a squat and a deadlift, and then for your upper body, if you can learn how to bench press, but also as well, if you can learn how to do like an overhead shoulder press with a barbell, and even then, like, you know, kind of a barbell row or something like that. I think if you can just learn fundamental basic exercises first, and if you can like do them very, very well, I think you're off to a really good start point there.
Can you just clarify then, why women shouldn't be scared of lifting weights?
I think, well, I think that's a consensus that's probably improving in the last couple of years. I think, people have become a lot more like acceptable, and I think, like there's an understanding now that you're not going to turn into some kind of ogre She-Hulk just because you picked up a barbell,
Yeah.
I think though what happens to what does happen to people, and it definitely happened to me, is like you get very you can get quite intimidated when you start in a gym first, because you're like, oh, I don't really know what I'm doing. Is everybody looking at me here? And I think the thing I would always say to people is like, people are kind of like vain creatures by nature, and you're definitely more concerned with yourself than you are with anybody else in the gym, like nobody, like I think one of the biggest fears you have when you first start weight training is you're like, oh, everybody in here is looking at me and I don't know what I'm doing, like, and they're going to, it's just more of like an insecurity. And it's, like, I suppose the one reassuring thing I would like to say is that absolutely nobody is looking at you, like everybody is in there to go in and do their own thing. And it's just, it's just like just overcoming that. And I think as well, I think like it's something that has improved in the last couple of years, where it's like, I've often been the only girl down in like in the rack, or like not so much in the rack, but there's the like in the weights area where it's like the benches, and it's like it's mostly lads grunting, like, and it's and then you're there. But I wouldn't I think like
lads grunting. Hang on a minute, lads grunting.
Look, I'm sure girls grunt as well, but like there's more lads grunting than there is girls.
I agree.
So but it's like I don't think people are afraid anymore, but I would say just to like not be intimidated, and that nobody's looking at you, and also that you're not like I suppose stereotypes have kind of improved now, and I don't know if people are afraid, or the only way that you're going to get bulky is if you eat too much. It's not if you lift too much. It's like weights. It's very hard even anyway for a woman to build muscle. Is it like to naturally build muscle is a very slow process, and it takes a serious amount of time. Like years and years and years. And like if you want to get bulky, the only way a woman will get bulky from lifting weights is if she wants to, and goes on a program specifically to get as big as possible.
Brilliant. And so how much focus should there be on in relation, because fast forward a couple of years now, and how much focus should there be on in relation to goal setting and dieting and the commitment to the gym? Is they the first three areas you should really rectify?
I suppose just first. Like obviously because I'm a competitor, and I do competitive bodybuilding, then like goal setting becomes like hugely important to me. But I suppose from a more general perspective, I mean, like I think it always like for motivation purposes or whatever, like to have a goal or to have an idea in mind of what you want to achieve, and just even like being able to visualize that and what you want to achieve is just a powerful tool, and kind of like I suppose ensuring that you actually stick it out,
follow through.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's it's like I kind of feel like one of the reasons that I kind of started competing in the first place was because I had actually just moved to Dublin, and I was living around the corner from a 24-hour gym. It was actually the Fly Fit in Ranelagh. And I was kind of, I got into a stage where, I suppose it's just because I'm kind of a competitive person anyway, but I was like, yeah, I'm going to the gym. I'm going every day or whatever, and I'm doing my splits, my legs and upper body, and then back and shoulders, and I'm doing all my splits. But I was like, if I don't really have a goal, or if I don't push myself here, I'm never going to know how far I can go with this.
She's very good.
And that was why I was like, I actually remember it. I had been following people on Instagram, and I was like, Jesus, I'd really love to do this, but I definitely don't think, and it's the one thing people always say to me, like, I couldn't do that. I couldn't do the diet or whatever. And I definitely didn't think that I'd be able to stay in and stay off the drink for about 6 months. But so, but I remember seeing girls on Instagram in that shape, and just being completely in awe of the dedication and just the determination to just follow something like that through. So I had planned to do one show just to see if I could do it. But
and when was that time frame out for you?
That was in I made the decision that I wanted to do it I think when I was about 24, 25. I was 24, 25. It was 2016. It was around May 2016, and I said I think I was actually 24 and just about to turn 25. So I made the decision for my 25th birthday that I wanted to get a coach and compete and wanted to do a bodybuilding show. So that was April, May, and I competed that October for the first time.
So it wasn't that much. It was a quick enough turnaround to prepare, was it?
I think it was. So I had probably started. I think I started. Actually, I was so. I remember actually having a big sit down chat with my mum to tell her that I wanted to do it because I was kind of nervous about what people would say,
Irish
or you know,
mammy.
like
How did
because
that go?
it was. It definitely. It has grown so much in popularity, but. I wasn't sure how people were going to receive it, like my friends or my family. So I remember like sitting my mom down, and she's like, "Oh, sure, of course, like I'll support you anyway." But she was like, "Oh, I think one of the things that what I always remember, she's like, she's like, now, like that won't help you to get a boyfriend or anything, like they don't they don't like people don't like girls that look like that." And she didn't mean it like that. Now she'll listen to this back and she'll kill me because she's like, "I didn't say it like that."
I didn't mean it.
And in fairness, she did. It wasn't in a. It was just in a kind of a.
Well, do you think that's a misperception though? Because you're thinking, oh, that's women who weightlift are big and bulky and
I know
or unattractive.
I
think
think people are always surprised actually when they see like even myself or like other competitors, because it's like even on Instagram and stuff, like our poses are obviously designed to make us look our most muscular, and like you. Even like because a lot of the photographs will be taken from the ground up, you actually look taller. So the two things people always say to me are, "God, you're so much smaller in real life," and actually,
well,
I thought you were really tall.
I wasn't going to say it, but that guy's fucking tiny. No, that's excellent. So what we're going to do is just finish off this is part section. Anyway, what we're going to do is so you did obviously touch on it before, but do you think girls are focused on the wrong areas in the gym from more experience, having competed and been doing bodybuilding for 4 years now, looking at someone who is looking to start? Do you think are they focusing on the wrong areas?
I don't want to say the wrong areas because I kind of feel like I hate saying like that any kind of fitness thing is wrong as such, because I really feel like it's such an individual thing, and one of the main things like for fitness or to have this lifestyle is that it has to be sustainable for you, and there's no point in you doing like split programs and stuff like that if you don't want to do split programs. If you don't want to do bodybuilding splits, if you don't want to do CrossFit style training, I think one of the most important things that you kind of need to look at really is finding something that you really, really enjoy and something that you think you can do for years and years and years. So I hate saying the wrong kind of training, but what I will say is that I think that there is quite I think people have kind of forgotten the basic fundamentals of training. So it's it's just, I think it would be more of a focus on just to go back to basics, so like just basics that work and stuff, and less of a focus on accessory training, because really accessory training is great, but if you don't understand the basic fundamentals of, like basic movements and stuff, if you don't, I think as well, like what people really kind of like should try to do at all is to kind of, if you're interested in fitness and if you're like looking to, I suppose, develop that interest or whatever, is to actually just get a better understanding of your own body. Because I think what people lack when they first start in the gym and whatever is like, I'm doing these exercises, but am I feeling them? Am I connecting with the exercises and stuff? Yeah. So it's just, I think like if I was going to start or whatever, what I would do is just get a really, really, really good trainer that can teach you the basics, or that can basically teach you every exercise. And then I suppose by trial and error with yourself or whatever. And that is the thing. I think lots of exercises are so specific because like no body is the same. So it's like, like where I feel, even a squat, because I'm, 5'1" or whatever, where like, a squat is supposed to target all muscles in the leg or whatever, but like depending on, it's even like the length of your femur, the length of your thigh, where you feel it the most, or where, it's like, I like a lot of women are kind of quad dominant, so they will feel like squats mainly in their quads. And then you've got some men, it's like more evenly dispersed, where it's like quad, hamstrings and glutes. And then you have some girls who'll only feel squats in their glutes. So it's like, it's basically getting to the stage where you can understand and you can perform all of the movements, and then you can kind of go from there to kind of make your training a bit more specific and just really understand your own body and like how you feel with the exercises, just making sure that you connect with them and you understand them. And I suppose that's the other thing, that you understand the purpose of them. It's like, what am I doing this for? Why am I, okay, so I'm doing like, lateral raises. Why am I doing lateral raises? What do I need them for? What muscle group is this working? Do I know where it is? Am I feeling it? It's kind of like evaluating yourself a little bit more just to get the most out of it. I think you can you can kind of like, you can skip like an awkward in-between phase where you don't really know what you're doing if you just put a bit more time into understanding your body and being able to perform exercises correctly and just understanding what you're actually doing. It's like with anything really. It's like, the more you understand something, the more you're going to get out of it, I suppose.
Yeah, so just take your time, do a little bit of research.
Yeah.
One of the questions I want to ask you is that where did you get your information from when you first started off looking at?
God, it's mad. I think probably what gave me like the initial base of information when I was kind of going about like looking to compete was probably actually just it was probably from Instagram. It was other girls, their pages, and just following them and stuff, so it gave me some of an idea of what it would entail. But to be perfectly honest with you, I think if I had my time again, I would have put a lot more effort into researching it properly. Like, obviously I did, like I would Google things and watch people's like show diaries and everything else. But like it's mad because there's like on the surface of what you think is involved in it, and then it's like the reality is that it goes about, I don't know, six layers deeper than what you think it's going to be, So yeah, it's definitely one of the things I would say to people. What I would probably say is to just, if you are thinking about it, to try and track, like, if there's a competitor that you really like, because you end up...
Anyone in particular for you?
At the time, I think it was actually a girl called Sarah Maloney, who actually...
Irish girl.
Yeah, she was Irish. And it was actually, I think it was following her that that kind of inspired me to go, yeah, do you know what, I really actually think that's for me, like, as it actually happened then, we actually ended up being on stage together for the national championships.
Oh, cool.
So yeah, but what I would say is just to find even like, if there's a competitor that you particularly like and stuff, because you get nearly invested in people and their journeys and stuff, it's one of those things. But I think it's a very, like, people, it's very welcoming, and people are always happy to share information and stuff. So if you are thinking about it, I would always advise, or not advise, but I would just say to find somebody that you like and to just ask them about it privately, about their experiences, because I think people won't dwell too much on the more negative aspects or whatever, because nobody wants to be seen to be a moaner in public. Like, you don't want to complain too much and stuff, but there's just, there's definitely a lot more to competing and everything else than what meets the eye, I suppose,
So follow people who give a good quality content.
Yeah.
Would be the main message.
I think it like, I feel like with Instagram, a lot of it is to do with a personal connection, Well, maybe it's just because of my own background and stuff, but like, I always find the people the most interesting parts of, their Instagram pages. So I think I probably just kind of would be, I kind of favor like somebody like, where you can get a real sense of their personality or whatever, that are honest and quality content. I mean, of course, that's not to say that if somebody is a sponsored athlete or whatever and they're giving out discount codes, that I would hold it against them either. Like, I understand for some people, like, it's if you're a fitness professional or whatever, like, and it is your way of making a living, that you know, that these opportunities may come your way and you may have to say yes. You know? So, yeah.
And how did you start to spot bad information then when you were coming up through the ranks the last 4 years, 5 years? How did you started critiquing information that was coming across?
I think like one of the things that bodybuilding does is it probably gives you it gives you a better understanding than most of just calorie deficits, energy balances, and, you know, like just like how weight loss actually works, you know, and people overcomplicate it so much. It's like, you know, there's so many diets out there, which is the best for weight loss, which is the best for fat loss and all this. And I think I've even grown up with, you know, like my mom with like books on like the Atkins diet and like, you know, all these different diets and so, you know, like the latest Hollywood diet and stuff like that. But I think probably, I don't really want to say bad information, but just more like misinformation. And it's like, you know, you don't have to starve yourself or deprive yourself of food for, you know, you don't have to be afraid of eating food that you like, you know, on a diet. And, you know, all it really comes down to, like, losing weight is just that you are moving more and, you know, eating, you know, it's like, okay, so yeah, basically calories in versus calories out, you know.
Being in a calorie deficit.
Being in a calorie deficit, just that you're burning more energy, you know, more food than you're consuming, and just that your activity levels are relatively high and stuff, you know. It's just people just overcomplicate the process, I think. So like, and I think, you know, like misinformation or bad information, I definitely was one of those people that would have seen, like, I remember the you know, skinny tea phases and all this, you know, like detox teas and stuff like that, you know. And
how did they work for you?
I think that they work for, I think some of them have, probably with detox teas, they probably have some kind of laxatives in them, to be honest with you. I'm not even sure, but I remember seeing them, and I remember seeing them a couple of years ago. I mean, like, yeah, that'd be great, you know. I just remember being like, oh, I want to try one of those teas, you know, like as it, you know, like not understanding really that, you know, things like that, you know, or even like really low calorie diets and stuff. It's like, wow, she lost like 7 pounds in 1 week. It's like, you didn't lose 7 pounds of fat in 1 week, you know, you've lost water because you have, you know, haven't been eating as many carbohydrates or something like that, you know. I think it's just realizing that there is really no quick fix solutions for dieting or anything, that everything is, you know, well, you can do it. You can do a quick fix solution if you want to. You can use, you know, a dramatic amount of weight in a month, but realistically, it's not sustainable. It's probably not healthy for you either. So it's just like, just having that, I suppose, just realizing that it's not going to happen for you overnight, but, you know, but also having the patience and stuff to, you know, having the patience and stuff to just see it through, and just a better understanding of just what it actually, how do you lose weight, or, you know, how do you build muscle if that's what you want to do. It's just kind of understanding the different aspects.
It's very important to trust the process.
Yeah, it sounds cheesy, doesn't it? But it, you know, it does.
It's not overnight.
No, and, you know, like, I suppose trust the process is quite it's kind of difficult to kind of do these things off your own bat as well. And I suppose one thing that I have always worked with coaches and stuff like that. I just find that an extra level of accountability from somebody who actually knows what they're doing and knows what they're talking about and stuff has always been helpful. And I think, like, I've learned a lot from coaches that I worked with in the past, even in terms of just, you know, like, just because I want to, he's a good friend now, but one of my coaches that I worked with, Carl O'Sullivan, I would have done a lot of like one-to-one PT sessions with him. And this was when I was still competing, because I just feel like with weight training and stuff, you can never stop learning, and you can never, you know, you never get to a point where you know it all. So about 2 years ago, I did quite a lot of PT. This is when I would have considered myself as experienced, just because there's always people who can teach you more, you know. So I would like, and I would still, even now, like, if, you know, if there was like, if there was a workshop on with somebody, you know, like that was particularly, I suppose the longer that I'm in bodybuilding, the more that I kind of want to learn about, you know, muscle mechanics and stuff like that. So, you know, if there was somebody coming here to do a seminar or something like that, I would still go. I kind of feel like your knowledge, you know, like with weight training or whatever, you can never stop. It's one of those things, you can always continue it, and you can always, like, there's always more to learn, I suppose. So it's kind of, you know, like you can always kind of step up a level, no matter what level you're on. It's
really good. And let's go right before we get into the next part of it. But what actually drew you to bodybuilding in the first place? Because there's difference between, you went from being very competitive on the track, to kicking ass, right?
Yeah.
And then you started to improve your body, and then you made the step into the bodybuilding, which is the next level above, if not a few more levels. What actually drew you into that?
I think actually the last thing I did was the last thing I did before I moved to Dublin was actually triathlons and stuff. So I had kind of started a weight training program while I was doing triathlons, because like, you know, wasn't anything I knew, but people were like, oh, you need to build up your upper body strength for your swimming for triathlons and stuff. So it was really hard to try and actually, because I was trying to train for the triathlons and also go to the gym at the same time. So, but I was doing, you know, like completely unhelpful, like gym trainings. Eventually, anyway, I think the actual training for the triathlon ended up taking over. But so I moved to, I suppose, after I finished the triathlon season, and I moved to Dublin. Then what drew me to competing in the first place, I think it was just, I just was like in awe. I don't think this is what most people are, but you see these people like in incredible shape, and you're like, I wonder what I'd look like that. Like, you know, I wonder, I think it's, and it was just like, you know, I just really liked I just really liked the challenge. I think it was the challenge that drew me to it in the first place, because it really is, it's definitely character building, I would say, in the last 3 or 4 years, you know, in terms of my, whatever about your physical strength. I think it's my mental strength that has probably improved the most, because it's, you know, it's really like, it's a really like vulnerable thing, I suppose, to put yourself on stage in a position where you're like letting your physique be judged by people who don't know you, like, you know, and it's, and I think it's like learning not to take that personally is obviously like, and you don't take it personally. It's one of those things, like, people are always like, I just find that so hard, you know. It's like, you actually really, really, really don't take it personally. It's, you know, it's a funny one, but I think it was the challenge of it that initially drew, like, you know, just seeing if I could do it, and then I suppose it became like wanting to prove to myself that I could do it, you know, because it was like, can I do it? Yes, I can. But you know, I did have a little bit of self-doubt about it, because just, you know,
was that self-doubt from yourself, or was it from
I think I like
family, friends, that type of circle type job?
I think in fairness, I think like most of my family would know me as someone who's very stubborn, you know.
Very good,
like is it, well, good or not good, I'm not really sure, but I think that like my mom would always say that, like, once I have decided or committed to like wanting to do something in my head, then that's just it, I'll do it, you know. I think my dad is quite similar in that respect as well. So I don't think my family would have doubted me, but I would think that people that I, you know, like, I think people would have been surprised at the time. I was quite quite fond you know, of like, I had a very busy social life, we'll say it that way. So I was quite a partier, quite a drinker and everything. So I'd say that people were like, really, she's gone to do that? There's no way, like, you know. You know,
that drive you on even more?
I like, in fairness, I don't know, maybe people weren't surprised at all, but I would think in my head that people were like, she's mad for the session, like, she'll never stick that, she'll never stick this. So did it drive me on? Yeah, I suppose it definitely, and it's one of those things, like, you know, nobody was probably saying anything negative, but in my head, I had kind of painted a picture so that I would motivate myself, you know. I wanted to prove that I could do it. So yeah, that was was probably, I think it was like just wanting to prove to myself that I could do it. That was the main like motivation. But as I kind of get more and more into it now, it's like, it's a really, obviously I have, just like a kind of a visual or a creative background anyway from my career and everything. And it's really like, if you're like from even like an artist kind of perspective, like, you know, it's really interesting looking at, you know, like top level bodybuilders, you know, in bikini, or, you know, and they're all like, you know, they're all kind of trying to get this like X shape or whatever. So like you're like refining your body over a period of time to try and fit this like ideal, you know, the ideal for I think the ideal for like, you know, for all bodybuilding shapes is a kind of an X frame, you know, but it's just more exaggerated as you go off the line, like, you know. So
yeah, very good. And so when you started out then again, what types of foods were you eating, and how important was it for you starting off to track your calories?
So, yeah, I'm going to say something probably really, like, I don't think it's not, maybe it's a surprise, maybe it isn't, but I would say that your diet is probably like 80% important, and then and exercise is 20%.
Okay.
So it's like, you can do, you know, like not a lot of exercise, but if your diet is on point, will see results anyway. I think that's one thing that people kind of struggle with. They're like, I do like 5 hours in the gym every week, you know, and I'm eating well, but I'm not losing any weight, or I don't look any different, or I don't look any better, and I don't look any different, or I don't look any better. And this is probably where tracking your calories becomes something that is important. I mean, is it important? Do you have to do it for the rest of your life? No. Should you have to do it? No. But at the same time, an understanding of your calorie intake is crucial to, you know, like, you need to understand, I suppose, it's a kind of a simple process, but it's like, you know, eat your normal food or weigh yourself at the start of a week, eat your normal food for a week. If you have put, like, you know, don't try and be good, don't try and be bad, weigh yourself again the next week. And that's, if you put on weight, you're probably eating too much food. If you've lost weight, maybe you need to eat a bit more food, or else if you haven't changed, you're probably at a maintenance level. So, you know, it's like, I feel like tracking calories is one of those things. If you can get quite obsessive about it, you can get kind of hung up on it or whatever. I think though that learning like food portions and just learning about like your like, I suppose, understanding and kind of having a ballpark idea of how many calories you eat a day is it's a useful thing. Is it like, it's all very dependent on your goals, how stringent you need to be with tracking your calorie intake. Obviously, when I in training for a competition or whatever, I have a food plan that I have to adhere to every day. I have to weigh all my food, and, you know, like, and there's just nothing that's not accounted for. But that's to get into, like, you know, stage condition levels of body fat. Whereas, you know, do you need to do that? Does a normal everyday person need to track everything and weigh everything? Absolutely not. You know, So
when you first started off then, a daily calorie intake, were you sitting on maybe 2,000 calories a day? And then you've upped it? No,
I think actually, because, so I started with a coach in around May, and it was a food plan again. So it was just like, you know, everything. So with the food plan, all your meals are planned out. Everything is kind of, you know, they decide so I think the calorie intake was actually probably about 1,600, which is quite, you know, you might be like, that's really not a lot of food. And it isn't, but, you know, with some diets and stuff like that, you know, you're kind of trying to like, you can kind of diet aggressively at the start, and then once you've lost a good bit of weight, you can kind of taper your calories up a little bit more then, because funnily enough, actually, the leaner you get, like, your body's ability to absorb more food becomes better as well. So I think actually what happened was, after 8 to maybe 10 to 12 weeks or something like that, my calories went up from 1,600 to about 1,800, but it was all still on a food plan as well. But actually, I think by the end of it, I had moved towards a more flexible dieting approach, where I would just have my calories and then my like macronutrient breakdowns. So I think it was like 150 grams of protein, 150 grams of carbs, and
Really?
50 fat or something like that. I don't know.
Per day.
Per day.
150 grams of protein in one meal.
Yeah.
5 cans of tuna. Jesus, grand. So, just something here I just have at the top of my head is that how did you recover after a heavy workout session?
In general?
In general, yeah.
I'd love to say I'd love to say I'm really good at knowing when I'm absolutely wrecked and knowing when I need to take some time off to recover. But actually, it's probably one of the things that I would say that I need I need to improve the most on. Obviously, with a very hard session or whatever, just with recovery, one of the most important things really is to make sure that you've eaten enough afterwards. I think some people kind of tend to especially if you're kind of in a diet, I want to lose weight mentality or whatever, but you kind of try not to eat as much, or you're like, I've done a brutal session now, so I'm actually going to just have yogurt or something for after my meal, because I lose more weight if I eat less after my session or whatever. But realistically, especially after we'll say you've done a heavy leg session, so your body's ability to absorb carbohydrates and stuff like that is actually at its greatest after a workout or whatever, your body's ability to break down glucose. So if you're going to have a carb heavy meal, the best time is actually after the gym, after your workout. And that will obviously, so I suppose a balanced meal of protein and carbohydrates and a bit of fat or whatever will obviously, protein especially, will help to speed up recovery there. But I would love to say that I do more to recover, but some people do Epsom salt baths and all that.
Does it help?
Does it help? I mean, it probably relaxes you, from a mental. I don't know. To be honest, I've never really done it. The only thing that I would always try to ensure after I have killed myself in the gym is that I would eat something. That I would eat make sure that I eat refuel myself appropriately. And if I'm in bits the next day, then if I'm really sore or whatever, I wasn't always good at this, but I suppose I'm just learning that quality is probably more important than quantity. And it's if you're wrecked the next day and you're your body's sore and everything's sore, you don't feel like you have to go to the gym, don't feel like you getting out for a walk or something, getting something
rest
to
up,
basically, and don't be afraid to rest up. I think that's that's one thing I definitely think across the board with bodybuilders. There's kind of this go hard or go home approach all of the time. It's I can't miss a session, I have to get my 5 or 6 sessions in a week and stuff. But I suppose as I just get that little bit more experience and stuff, I'm there's literally no point in running myself into the ground. Even from a progression point of view, or it's muscles need time to recover and repair and stuff to grow. So it's just it's trying to teach myself that I think when you get so into a groove of going every day, well, I obviously have, just from years and years of doing shows and everything, it's I nearly feel guilty if I don't go, but it's actually teaching myself that no, you need a rest and you're tired, and recognizing that I'm tired and stuff. That's one of the things I've kind of learned.
Excellent stuff. Let's get into the importance of having a one-to-one coach.
I feel if you're starting out and you're and you're new to it and all, and if you really, I suppose, if you've never had a structured program, or basically if you're starting at a baseline level and you've decided I want to compete, then I would say that one of the first things that you need to do is you need to find a coach.
How do you find one?
You see, I suppose I found when I first started, I had a kind of a basic level of understanding that I knew I needed a coach, but I also started doing research and I saw that I would need to meet, if I got a coach in Dublin, I would need to meet them on a weekly basis, for them to look at my physique or whatever, and to do check-ins or to see how I was going. So I didn't want to do this. I was so shy at the time that I was like, I don't want somebody looking at me half naked. But I'm going to get up on stage in a couple of months and then it'll be fine. So I actually didn't want anybody. I didn't want anybody to look at me. So I got an online a coach that was online, and he was based in Belfast. So I would just have to send him picture check-ins as opposed to video check-ins, which are picture check-ins as opposed to real life ones, which sounded much better to me at the time. But I actually
it's awkward though, is it? Just at the start.
Oh yeah, it's like it nearly seems like second nature now. But it's very awkward and it's very personal. It's like well, it's fine with pictures are fine, but it's funny. Like I would love to have seen the pictures that I sent at the very start when I couldn't pose because I didn't know how to. So you're just sending.
You're right.
So sorry for the yawns.
Yeah.
So it's very. It's just kind of awkward at the start because you don't know how to pose. You don't know what they're looking to see in your physique, so you just standing there just like a bit of a lemon, really, like just hoping for the best. But it took me. I think it took probably like a good 2 or 3 months before I wasn't like nervous about sending the photo check-ins, but. If I had my time again, I suppose, in terms of a coach for my very first show, I would definitely get somebody that I would actually have to see every week. And even somebody who can actually just do PT sessions with you as well, because like if it's online or whatever, it's just, you're getting your gym programs and like, there's a kind of an assumption of an ability level there that might not necessarily be there.
Okay.
So it's like, I probably thought I was better in the gym than I was when I signed up. I was like, I know what I'm doing. But I probably didn't. I probably needed more guidance, I think, in terms of it was fine, but just for more optimal results, I suppose, I think I probably should have got a coach that was local that I would have seen regularly, and just somebody as well, a coach that was also a PT. So that basically they would go through the program with me so that they would know that I understood all of the exercises and the functions of them and why I was doing them or whatever. That's one of the things I think I would have saved myself an injury. I got a pretty bad one towards the end, or not towards the end, probably like about 16 weeks into my prep. I thought I was like, I didn't realize, I suppose, that just obviously as I was losing weight, I was kind of losing some strength as well. So I just went to do like a rack pulls. It's kind of like a deadlift, but the range is shortened. And I just I loaded up 80 or 90 kilos on the bar, and I don't know what I ended up actually straining my glute medius. So it's like one of the small muscles in your glutes. And it put me out of action. I couldn't even pick up a barbell or bend down to get food out of the fridge, which was even more important. I couldn't even pick up a barbell though for about 2 or 3 weeks.
Jesus, it really put you off.
Yeah, and it was just I don't even know. It was like a slight movement, and I didn't even know I'd done it until afterwards. But I feel like particularly with anything with your back, any kind of lifts, which obviously your back is so important, and I didn't know how incapacitated I was going to be until I couldn't do it, So it's just I think if I had a better understanding of technique in terms of my back, I think a lot of times when with deadlifts or whatever, if the weight becomes too heavy, people tend to round their backs, and that's what kind of causes problems. I think that's what happened to me.
Very good. And so the importance of having a one-on-one coach, and then what exactly should you look for in a coach? Would it be so they're responsible for weight training, nutrition, and posing?
Not posing.
Not posing.
You actually have to get a separate coach. Well, unless it's a female, no, but mostly no.
So those two areas.
Yeah, it would be your nutrition and your training program, and then any subsequent. So you'll probably never finish your your nutrition will have to be adapted just to ensure that that the fat loss is consistent.
Okay.
So nutrition is the ability, tweaking your calories and tweaking or whatever, that would be the coach's responsibility. And then you kind of get to a point as well where, you know, you've been dieting for 10 to 12 weeks or whatever, and you know, sometimes like less is not always more. So it's like sometimes it's like, you know, the automatic reaction is if you stopped losing weight or whatever, you know, your fat loss can plateau after a while, which is common with diets after a while. You know, it's like the reflex would be to cut your calories, you know, or, you know, like eat less or do more exercise. But actually it's funny like this, but it would be the coach's call to decide this. But, you know, something like a refeed of like, you know, 1 day of high carbohydrates or something like that, you know, to try and just kind of kickstart that, kickstart your metabolism again, or you might need a calorie increase and stuff. And I think that's where like basically a coach kind of comes in there, because it's like you like after a while you start to get a little bit like, no, I need to get as lean as I possibly can. But the thing about bodybuilding especially is that you need to have muscle as well. So it's trying to hold on to muscle but also get lean at the same time. And really it's like nutritional manipulations and stuff like that will, and it's just someone having that experienced eye to know when you look like, when you're looking fatigued and when you look like you know, nobody wants to look kind of over dieted, and it kind of happens a lot with females because it's a hard one to call. So it's just trying to ensure, like, because I feel like, you know, coaches with women have an extra responsibility because obviously, you know, hormonally they're so sensitive, and, you know, you've got like reproductive system to play with and stuff. So it's a little bit more, they're just a little bit more complex than a man, because you just have, you know, like you just have to be mindful of a few more things, and you just got a lot more going on hormonally with the woman. So it's, yeah, what I would definitely look for in a coach is just somebody
who understands, and,
you know, sometimes it's kind of hard to call. Like, you know, people can look very, very, very impressive on their Instagram, you know, in terms of their transformations. You know, they're like, look at my client here, they've, you know, look at this client, you know, and they're like, you know, it's like client results and stuff like that, and like which are great. But I suppose it's not just about client results. It's kind of like, you know, what kind of an educational background that they have. You know, do they have a scientific background? Not so much, you know, that they need to be qualified sports nutritionists or whatever, but it's just like, do they have an interest in health as well? You know, it's because obviously you can prep anybody for a show, you can get anybody lean, but it's like, can you do that in a healthy manner that won't be damaging to them on a long term, you know? Did
you ever have that experience?
No, I would say that I probably like lost weight too quickly for my first show. But I think it was more down to, and this is a personal admission, but I think it was more down to myself. I think that I eventually was like, you know, there were things on my meal plan that I was like, why do I need this 10 grams of coconut oil or whatever? Like, I don't need that. I don't like it. I'm not going to eat it. So it's like, I like, you know, so you kind of, you know, you have your calories, which aren't that low anyway, which aren't that high anyway. And then I was kind of undercutting myself and leaving stuff out. And obviously a lot of the things I ended up leaving out or not eating was like butter or fats basically. And just in terms of like women hormonally or whatever, like, you know, when you start to cut fats or get them really low, like that's when you can kind of run into problems like hormonal problems, more so like where you just like lose your period quicker. So but I lost mine quite quickly. I think it was just because of the shock that I put my body under by like just dramatically cutting my fat intake.
Really? And was there a stigma in relation to the fat, thinking, oh Jesus, shouldn't be?
No, it was actually just that I'm not that I think it was more like a personal thing where it's like, I'm not bothered. I don't want to put coconut oil on my chicken. Like, you know, I don't like the taste of coconut oil.
And now?
It's like...
no, I love coconut oil.
No, I know I still don't like it. So, yeah, I think I kind of undercut my calories myself a little bit. So, you know, that's the thing, I suppose, with you know, a coach will give you all the tools, but at the end of the day, really, it's up to you. Yeah. You know, so it's like, I feel like a lot of coaches get a bad rap. And of course, they have a responsibility to keep you healthy, you know, hormonally or whatever, and even, you know, physically and mentally and stuff like that. But ultimately, you have to be responsible for yourself. You know, like you are...
Take account. Be accountable.
Be accountable to, like a coach can help you and give you all the tools, but ultimately it's on you.
Yeah, very good. So how long did you bulk and cut for competitions, and what exactly is the difference between the two for women?
I would say in the last couple of years, so before my first show, I never did any. I didn't do a bulk. I went straight into a cut.
Because you were at that weight,
I wasn't.
Or did you try?
No, I kind of lacked understanding of the like. I kind of thought I suppose I was kind of a little bit like Asher. I have a decent amount of muscle. I think just from just generally like I was like I've been weight training now for like about a year consistently, and I thought that this was a sufficient amount of time to just start to prep for a competition. In fairness, maybe it was maybe my coach's responsibility to say, actually, you needed a little bit more muscle or whatever. But funnily enough, I lost quite a lot of weight and was like quite thin, but I still had I was relatively still, I wasn't tiny. My legs are really small, and I was really surprised actually that I thought my legs would be kind of muscly when I cut down, but actually it just turned out it was mostly fat. They weren't they weren't big to begin with, but I was like, I think like of all of the training, I think the most consistent training I would have done was leg training up before I competed. But it was actually I think one of the biggest misconceptions that people probably have is before you never really know how much muscle that you have until you do a cut. I didn't really know that I was going to be as small as I was for my first show, just because I thought I had more muscle than I actually had. I think that's a common thing. People especially I think especially girls, they kind of especially if they've done a season and you go into an off season and you do a bulk or whatever, and you're like, I'm definitely after getting so much bigger, and then you'll give yourself 3 months off or something, and you think that you've put on a lot of muscle. In reality, you haven't. I think it's like however much muscle you think you have, then probably half that. It's like, and I think the longest the longest I've done a bulk for is about 3 or 4 months, because I suppose, and some people do longer, they'll take a full year out or whatever. I think the longest bulk that I've ever done was about 4 months, and I can't say that it was structured, to be honest. So it was after my first year competing, I had, it just had one of the things I didn't kind of foresee was how difficult that the post show was going to be. So I had literally zero control over what I put in my mouth. I could not stop eating. It's what people warn you. They're like, after the show is quite difficult, because obviously you've gone from a very restrictive diet to no holds barred, eat whatever you want. And just I remember when you taste palatable foods again, like chocolate and ice cream and stuff, it's like, you've had one and all of a sudden the bag is gone and you're like, did I just eat that? I don't even remember eating it. It's like it's nearly like mindless. But so I bulked for about 4 months and was quite probably didn't went back into prepping for a show for not the right reasons. I was like, I'm uncomfortable at this weight, so I'm just going to diet for another show, which was the completely wrong attitude to have. So it's just another mistake that I've made.
That's good.
But so it's bulk. It is important. It's all very individual though as well. Like some people will need longer to bulk, and some people will need longer to cut and stuff like that. But it's kind of it's just I suppose you don't really have a good idea. You don't really have a good idea of how much muscle that you have until you cut. So it's it's kind of hard. It's kind of hard. You kind of need to in one way you kind you nearly need to I would probably say to people, if you decide you want to compete, to just take your first year as a complete learning curve to see where you're at, and to just enjoy the experience and get as lean as you can, see what you look like, and I suppose just see how much you would have to do. If you're competitive, then that's brilliant, and then if you're not, just to use it as a kind of a ballpark to see where you're at and what you need to improve in your physique to come back and be competitive.
Very good. That's brilliant. So we'll move on to question 6. Would be, what supplements did you take to prevent injuries, or glucosamine?
Did I take glucosamine? I actually, you
said that way better than I could.
No, I know it's hard to say. Probably a controversial statement in that I actually don't take any supplements at all. No, and some people will say, oh well, you probably should. No, I actually just take whey protein. One of the things I kind of feel about supplements in general is that if you're going to take them, then that's it. You commit to them. You take them every day. You take them in the morning or whatever. And I actually just don't have those levels of commitment. So I don't take supplements. I just take whey protein. As obviously to help me with my protein intake. But so like in terms of what you need to take, I would say like whey protein, and obviously a lot of people really creatine is quite creatine is highly recommended as well. But I feel like supplements are another added extra expense onto people as well, and if you can afford them, great, and if you can take them, if you're committed to taking them every day, then great. But I don't, and I'm okay.
You're doing well.
I'm still healthy. So
brilliant. Let's break down the categories. So, is a difference between competitions like the NIFMA, the IFBB, the NABBA, and RIBBF. So, I don't know what the abbreviations stand for, but NIFMA is the national.
I'm just gonna go a national. I'm actually not even sure what NIFMA stand for. I do know the rest of them.
Okay.
I think, but
so the IFBB is the Irish Female Bodybuilding.
No, IFBB is actually the International Federation. Oh, fuck. No, IFBB. Look, do you know what? I'm just going to call them by their acronyms.
That's fine. Yeah.
Everybody will know them by that anyway.
Yeah.
So you know them by acronym, like those abbreves as
so the NIFMA. So
NIFMA, that one is it's based in the north, but they usually have shows in Dublin and Belfast as well. It's quite really I've never done it. I've never competed with them, but I know people I know people who have, and I've really enjoyed the experience and stuff. So it's quite I think it's quite a beginner level one. So if you've never competed before or whatever, it's a nice one, because it's there's a real focus on like your own personal enjoyment of the day, and they're quite nice to their athletes, and they're just about people getting up there and just enjoying the experience. I suppose not so much. It's more
like a stepping stone.
It's less about the taking part. It's less about the winning than it is the taking part. But yeah, so I don't want to say it's a stepping stone, but it's just like it's more of an introduction to Bodybuilding Federation. So the winners from that show would probably look dramatically different to the winners from the other shows.
Okay,
not dramatically, but there is definitely a difference.
So which were the competitions that you first entered? Which was that organization?
So my first ever show was it was actually NABA, and it was Mr. Ireland and it was in the Olympia Theatre.
Okay.
So that was my very first show in September 2016. And I was petrified. It was totally what I thought it was going to be as an experience. Like I'll never forget. Like, it was a surreal experience as well. The Olympia is huge, and it's a kind of a prestigious. Well, it's not huge, but it feels like it's huge when you're standing there.
The Olympia is a big venue.
So it was quite. And it's it's kind of like a prestigious venue as well. But I remember like walking backstage, and just like the room is just crowded full of other girls. They're like I was totally unprepared for like the backstage being so small. and so cramped, and it's like, you know, like there's not that many sockets and everybody is trying to fix their hair, and it's like it's kind of an intimidating experience as well, really, because, you know, like, because I was so new into it and it was my first show, you probably, like, I hadn't met anybody else, you know, in during the course of my journey. I hadn't met anybody else on prep, so I didn't know what anyone else looked like, apart from on Instagram, you know, like, you just have no way of, it's like
foreseeing that.
You just don't know what people like. You don't know. You just start automatically like comparing yourself to everybody else, and you're like, oh, you know, it's just, you start freaking yourself out, I think, you know, because it's your first time actually seeing other people who compete as well, you know, and it's like, yeah, it's definitely nerve-wracking. I was really, really, really nervous. I couldn't remember my posing. I couldn't remember the poses, and it was a disaster. Like, I don't want to, no, actually it wasn't a disaster, but I was last in my first show. I came last, like dead last, and I deserved it, because I was so, like, you know, people are like,
well, how can you prepare yourself for something that you haven't experienced before?
You can't.
Yeah.
You know,
and
like,
but when you did finish up and that show was over, you still had the confidence and determination to go again. It didn't throw you off it, basically.
No, no, it didn't. I was, you know, I suppose it was the first, like, you know, what people, I don't want to say what people don't tell you, but what you kind of tend to not understand the importance of when you first start is like that how you present yourself on stage is almost more important than how you look, you know. Okay. So it's like, I'd obviously gone to posing lessons and everything, but you kind of get so, you know, you get so tired by the end of it. I think you kind of start to neglect your posing, or you don't understand the importance of it until you have gone on stage and you forget your poses, or you just, you know, like you just feel the stiffness in your body, and it's supposed to be of course the posing's not comfortable and it's not supposed to be either, but your job is to make it look as fluid as possible and present yourself, and, you know, especially because it's bikini I've mainly competed in, so it's very much about an overall package. So it's like, you know, like your posing is supposed to be like feminine and fluid, and just, you're supposed to look very graceful and everything, but when you're kind of, I think it's like a lack of experience or just a lack of practicing or whatever, but you just, you know, the if you don't practice the posing enough, it looks a bit stiff, it looks a bit wooden, and then you can look really, really nervous, like I did. And I just, like, I couldn't, you know, you do quarter turns for that federation, and it was just like these 4 poses. I just made a mess of it, basically. But
okay.
So it's fun. You know, it's funny. Like, it was learning. I went back and I did the nationals in the RBBF nationals in Limerick 2 weeks later. I was actually 5th in that. Then I got like a top 6.
So that was 5 months. That was in.
It was like 2 months. It was 2 weeks later.
Oh, 2 weeks later. Still in September time.
Yeah, it was
Jesus.
October. It was October. So I went again because I kind of was like, oh, this is like, you know, it's just like it was just a stage fright. So it was just, I just knew that I was nervous.
It's an introduction really to it all.
Yeah, that's it. I knew that I was nervous, and I knew that it was more like, it wasn't my physique that had let me down. It was my presentation, that's nearly harder to stomach, because it's like, I've gotten the shape, but I can't actually show.
You can't, yeah. It was a hurdle as such. Yeah. So you done NABA and RIBBF.
Yeah, that was in my very first year. Yeah.
First year.
And then the second year after that, I did RBBF
again,
and like, was still really, really nervous. And I also did a show in Birmingham with a federation called PCA. So they're kind of an emerging federation. They're much bigger here now than they were at the time.
Okay.
So I competed in Birmingham with them as well. And
so in those, just before we carry on a little bit more, in those organizations, how many categories do they compete in?
For women, I think so. For the RIBBF, there's only 3 categories for women.
Just the 3 categories. Yeah.
I actually think there was only 2 up until this year. In the last 2 years, they usually have bikini and body fitness, but they've also introduced a category called wellness in the last 2 years.
Okay.
So wellness is like I'm gonna call it like, it's like I suppose it has its origins in South America. So it's kind of like bikini, but it's less. So bikini is very proportional. So it's like they want, you know, like your shoulders and your shoulders and your like shoulder to waist ratio and your waist to glute ratio. Like they want everything has to be in proportion, you know. So you don't want to be bigger on the top or bigger on the bottom. You know, everything just has to like just be proportional and very balanced, very proportional. But actually wellness is the opposite. So they want, like, you know, it's like it's for girls who are kind of genetically, I suppose, that they would be bigger on the bottom. So they have like, especially like, you know, the Brazilian women who do it, like, you know, they have absolutely huge quads, like, you know, huge, like just really, really dominant on the lower half, and then more like bikini on top, but like really, really dominant on the lower half. So that's an emerging category here in Ireland. And so, and then body fitness is kind of, see, they don't have a figure category in RBBF, so it's body fitness, and it's more like the more you go, like, you know, the different muscle classes. So body fitness would be, the girls would be a lot more, they'll have a lot more muscle mass and they'll be a lot more conditioned. So, you know, like it's a different criteria. So it's like, but then in other federations, they've got bikini, then they've got tone figure, train figure, athletic figure, women's physique. So, you know, there's 4 or 5 categories, and then the degrees of leanness and muscularity would increase as you go up the categories. So it's like tone figure is a little bit leaner than bikini and more muscle mass, and then train figure is, you know, considerably leaner than bikini and, you know, more muscle mass again. Athletic figure is very, very lean, and then, you know, it's like as you move up the categories, it's just your, like, the level of muscle that you need, and the conditioning, the level of conditioning that you need kind of increases as well. So bikini would be seen as kind of like a gateway, but that doesn't mean that you don't need conditioning, or, you know, that it's just more of an introductory. It's like bodybuilding light. I even find, you know, because I find that, you know, people are like, oh, you're a competitive bodybuilder, but I feel a little bit like of a cheat calling myself that, like with bikini, because it's not it's a little bit less extreme, I would say, you know. Okay. It's quite an accessible look. I think that's why it's popular.
And so you compete in, what you predominantly competed in has been bikini in those organizations.
Yeah, I changed federation this year, so it was my first year. It was my first year competing with IFBB. Okay. I actually competed with them in London. So just in there, and it was one of the biggest shows of the year. So it's just amateur Olympia. So it's Olympia, but for amateur level. So that was it was my first time competing with them. I had kind of become a little bit disillusioned with competing with Irish federations. I just felt like I just wasn't the right look for the federation. I just felt like even at a kind of a, you know, at a national level, I just wasn't. There was a degree, it's a very lean look here in Ireland, very lean, very, very dry look, and I just found that, you know, no matter how lean I got, I wouldn't look like that, you know. And then even in terms of muscle mass, I think I kind of, like, I probably, if I wanted to, what I'd describe myself as, I probably could move to another category if I wanted to, you know, if I would commit to, like, actually putting on more size. I think I probably would be bigger than a lot of the bikini, not a lot of the bikini girls, but, you know, a good few of the bikini girls here in Ireland. I would be just naturally, like, thicker set, so my muscles would be a bit fuller. So even when I diet down, I would still look bigger than other girls on stage, you know. And it's just, I kind of felt like even looking at, you know, like I suppose looking beyond Ireland and at a European level or whatever, I just wasn't suited to the Irish Federation. But then I was looking at IFBB, and that would be NPC in America, and that would be, you know, like that it's the biggest federation in the world for bikini. So it would be, you know, like it's I suppose the most prestigious one. That's where the Olympia girls would be NPC athletes and stuff. And I started looking. I kind of started doing more research and just looking into more like the lineups and, you know, the criteria for that federation, and just felt like I was like, I'm not positive, but I think I might be more suited to this federation because it's just a little bit more of a slightly more like I think you can get away with being a little bit more muscly, but it's still not as lean. It's kind of a funny one, but I also feel like the the Irish federations, they judge primarily from the front and from your front pose, and then like from the back is not important. But from an NPC perspective, and I would be stronger from the back than, well, not stronger, but from an NPC perspective, like you know, the like your glute fullness and and you know, the tie in between the glutes and the hamstrings and stuff is very important. It's you know, it's one of the things that, like, you know, that you would probably win at, you know, it's like if you're just like someone, I think they would judge primarily from the back and then they judge from the front, but Irish federations are different. They kind of judge from the front and not from the back.
But as a whole, the MBC is NPC. Sorry. That's a worldwide approach, and the Irish Federation has a smaller different way.
I kind of, one of the things that I like about NPC and IFBB is that right down from like an amateur level up to a pro level, there's a set criteria, there's a certain look, and I feel like it's, you know, it's much easier to kind of say, right, this is kind of what I'm aiming for, you know, in terms of what I should aspire to look like as a competitor. And, you know, like you need I feel like you need a benchmark, because, you know, it's like with the, you know, with different federations, when there's no real benchmark, then it's like you go for feedback and it's like, okay, well, you actually need bigger shoulders, or you need less, or you need to be leaner, or, you know, like you need bigger shoulders. But because there's no criteria, you come back with bigger shoulders the year after, because you've been told, you need to work on your shoulders. And then it has changed. Actually, your shoulders are too big. You know, so it's like when there's no benchmark, the criteria can change all the time. So it's like you're working towards a criteria that doesn't really exist, because I feel like there's not as much consistency in who wins. The winners don't all look the same. The winners look quite different. You know, like from, obviously you're all judged on, you know, it's all, the categories are by height, but like, you know, there's varying degrees of condition and muscularity in the Irish federations that kind of doesn't, and whereas in IFBB there's more of a consistency across the board in terms of the winner will always be the closest match to the criteria that they have set
for that
federation. So I just find it, just from my own perspective, and I suppose for like personal development
for people wanting to go into, girls that want to go into it,
like I suppose it's just like the Irish federations or whatever, like, you know, it's very prestigious, it's very well established and everything, but I just feel like, just from if you want to continue your development as an athlete or whatever, then it's just you have more of a, you know, you just have more to aim for or something, you know. It's like you know what you're working towards, you know, like you're not trying to build a physique in the dark. In terms, you're like, I don't know if I you know, it's like, I'm happy with this look, but will the judges be, you know? It's like, you know,
it's hard
like,
to know where you stand, really, isn't it?
When the criteria becomes a little bit flexible, then it becomes very hard to decide. You know, like you just don't really know how you're going to get on, because you don't know if your look will be the look that they go for that year. Yes. You know, so it becomes much harder.
Whatever trends, is it?
Yeah, well, trends, you know, like, and a lot of it, you know, like, not a lot of it, but, you know, like, one of the things you absolutely can't control on the day is the lineup, you know, and it's like, sometimes the lineup can be full of like really, really smaller, leaner girls. So automatically the judges are going to go for a smaller, leaner girl, because that's predominantly what the lineup is, you know. But so it's hard to call. Like, that's one of the things about bodybuilding. In some ways, you have to be, as long as you are happy with the physique that you're presenting yourself, then that, you know, that should be, you know, like an achievement in itself. Because in some ways, like, once you've done your best and you've brought what you feel is your best, then, you know, like, that should be an achievement in itself. But, like, you know, because really so much of it is outside of your control, you know, in terms of like you know, judges' preferences, or, you know, and just like, you know, it's like you know, it's like human nature. Like, if there's 5 lads standing in front of me, I'm naturally going to gravitate towards one of them, whether I, you know, and I can't control that. And I feel like that's, you know, that's one of the things with judging as well. You actually, in some ways, can't control what you're drawn to. So, yeah.
And so what we'll do is, you won, which competition did you win?
So I did Amateur Olympia in October, and I entered 2 categories. So I won the intermediate class, and then was 5th in the open class. The open class is the one that you would go to. It's like so you have the chance to win a professional card, which is like the holy grail of bodybuilding. So
is that where you want to go?
I'd be lying if I said that I have no interest in it, but I would love to. But at the same time, I say that in the same vein of knowing how difficult that it actually is to achieve that. Yeah. But I feel like it's not one of those things where it's like I have to achieve this right now. It's like it's one of those things that I would love to someday. But I also understand how long, or I just know how much it takes. And I also understand that this is like my hobby, even though, it would be like, it's a great thing. It would be a great thing to do as a professional career, but it's just, it's not, ultimately it's not what puts like bread on the table. It's not what pays my bills. It's actually what causes me considerable financial strain, but
Please
it's just,
donate.
but it's just, I obviously have to prioritize my actual career and,
But that was with a competition or an organisation, not in Ireland.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was. So, and I suppose I had never won a trophy in any Irish show with any Irish federation before I competed with the IFBB in London, and it was a really nice one actually, because it was just one of the things that was rewarding for it, I suppose, was they make, one of the promises that they make to athletes and one of the commitments they make is that every single judge is impartial. They have no connections to any athletes and stuff like that. So it's nice to go somewhere where nobody knows you and you go in and you get, you place and win and stuff on off your own back and on your own merit. And I suppose years and years of not really performing or not placing in Irish shows. Sometimes I deserved it. I absolutely will fully admit that I just wasn't good enough, wasn't lean enough or whatever. And then there were some days where I was a little bit like, I feel like I was a little bit hard done by here. But so it was cool to go over there and just do well on what I feel like was my own merit. Okay. So yeah.
Very good. Jesus, that's deadly. And let's talk about the for girls that want to get into it or who are actually already onto it, the costs of everything. So one of the things is the costs of the equipment. What I would say bikini, which is often not an awful lot, but it can go into the hundreds.
I would say
thousands?
Unfortunately it does go into the hundreds. I'm sure at pro level, but usually the girls that would wear the pro suits, I'm sure that at that stage they're sponsored to wear the suits. But like to buy them yourself would probably be in the 800 to 1,000 euro bracket. I know people are generally
Were you shocked by that?
Well,
initially yourself, what?
I think it was one of the first things that I discovered actually, because it was one of those exciting things to make it feel like I was at, like it makes it feel more real when you go looking at the bikinis on the website. And it was one of the things I was like, Jesus, like a bikini costs 500 quid. And I was like, Christ. It's like, it's the most expensive item in your wardrobe, but it's the one that you sometimes you buy things and you're like, sure, I'll get the wear out of it. If it's expensive, you justify it to yourself, but you'll never get the wear out of these bikinis.
and it's going to sound weird for coming from a guy, but what colours? Like, why would you choose? Why is there a difference between colours? It helps you stand out more?
You can get really into this, but like some colors match your skin tone better, and it's mad because you actually like sometimes you actually don't really know until, and a lot of the time you won't see your bikini up until like a few weeks before the show. It depends. There's like I think it's more common now. Like there's a girl in County Down, I think, and she does fittings and alterations and stuff. So but a lot of the time you actually have to order online. So you're just sending off you're sending off measurements, and like a lot of the time you pick a color based on a color that you love or something. Like it's like, my favorite color is red or something like that. And I've worn red like twice, but actually. And it's because I really like the colour, but I wore my one of my friends had actually lent me an aqua kind of blue bikini for the last show, and it would look like it was kind of like a teal. They show up different on stage under the lights. That's the other thing.
Oh,
with so what they look like on you, like, you know, compared to what they look like on stage is usually kind of different, and especially sometimes the bikini doesn't go with the tan. And you know, like, it's like the bikini doesn't go with the way that the tan has come up on you and all, you know, like it's a minefield. So yeah, you like, you know, you get them under in every color now. So it's mad though, but like strong colors tend to flatter people more. They tend to more like stand out more on stage. So it's like you'll see a lot of like kind of blues, like vivid color blues, greens, reds, and stuff like that. And then you know, like different hair colors will go better with different bikinis. You know, like a lot of the times you'll see in the pro shows, a lot of the brown haired girls will wear like purples or lilacs because that seems to suit that skin tone. Whereas you'll see with the blonde haired girls, you know, they'll go for like reds, greens, blues, and stuff like that. But you kind of generally don't know until it's on you. You know,
yeah,
that
yeah.
kind of way. But I would say though, that's another thing that, like, you know, another competitor can help you with, or even to ask the person who's making your bikini just in terms of what works well for different skin tones and different hair colors. Some of them have gotten quite advanced now, and they'll make you send pictures of yourself, you know, just like with no tan on in natural light or whatever, so that they can kind of see what your natural skin tone is. So they can say, okay, this color probably won't suit you, you know, even with a tan, or, you know, whatever. So the, like, whoever's making your bikini is definitely there to help you in terms of picking a color. And as I said, a lot of the time you'll gravitate towards a color that you like, but it mightn't necessarily suit you. Yeah.
No, that's cool. That's cool. And then, was the cost of everything? Do you think it was worth it in the end?
I mean, I have to. Of course, it was worth it. But I think one of the things, I suppose, you know, I did compete overseas, and it was quite expensive just in terms of where it differed to Ireland was the actual registration fees for the competition. So I think, like, you know, a normal Irish show was about £40. It's about €50 to enter. But the IFBB in London, you can enter multiple categories. So I entered intermediate, and then I entered the open class as well. So it was actually £150 a category. So in terms of registration, it was like over, you know, ended up being like over €300. And then you've got the flights were fine actually, and the accommodation was fine. But I also one of my friends, Becky, lent me a bikini, so I didn't have to buy a bikini this time. But
shout out to Becky.
Yeah, Becky. So I didn't buy a bikini. And I actually had bought the tan, and you know, so we did the tan in the hotel room or whatever. Because the tan, I think the actual event tanners were charging like nearly another £100 for tan, and then like if I didn't do my makeup myself, it would have been another £70 for makeup, and then
really,
yeah, it was like I would say ballpark everything for Amateur Olympia probably cost me well over €1,000. Like, Jesus. Yeah,
but it was worth it.
Oh, it was worth it.
But it
is quite an expensive, and like, I suppose, and that's actually probably not even taking into account coaching fees.
Yeah,
and also, like, you know, like, people always say to me, wow, you must save so much money because you don't go out drinking. I'm like, no, like, I
miss the drinking.
I'm eating the food, you know, like, your food is like, especially if you're going for like a high protein diet or whatever, you know, like meat, like, you know, like buying like vast quantities of meat is expensive, you know, like supplements, like, you know, you probably need new protein every month, or, you know, like, and if you want to get into like the BCAAs or pre-workout realms, and just like, you know, just like food and supplements and everything is expensive. Coaching is expensive. Posing lessons are expensive. You know, not expensive, but I guess posing, you know, like, especially if you're new to it or whatever, you're going to need, and like, you know, the advice people are like, when should I start? And I'm really like, as soon as you've made the commitment that you want to compete, I would say start to learn to pose. You can actually never start too early with posing, because it's like the longer you have to get to grips with it, you know, the more comfortable you'll be with the movements, and, you know, like, basically the more time you give yourself with posing, the better it's going to be.
And how many poses are there that you have to
know?
Yeah.
So it depends on the federation again. So this are actually the federation I competed with in London. They actually only have they do half turns, so you only need to really do a front pose and a back pose, and then you have these little twirly ones in the middle called transitions that just kind of, you know, make the transition from the front to the back flow.
More graceful.
So, but it's like every single transition is just another opportunity to highlight your physique.
Okay.
So they end up being like little mini poses along the way. But anyway, but then for the Irish federations, it's all quarter turns. So it's from the front, and then you go from, you know, transition then front to the side pose on your right hand side or the left hand side, and then you'll transition to the back, and then transition to the other side, and then back to the front. So it's 4 turns like I think most federations apart from IFBB are actually 4 quarter turns. And it's funny because everybody has a side that they favour. My side is I feel like I look much better on my left side than I do on my right. I think it's because, like, I don't know why, but my hip mobility is better on the left hand side. So it's like for your side pose, it's a lot. It's, you know, trying to get lift your hip up as high as you can. And people always say, like, what, you know, one of the things as well for when, you know, like when you start posing, I think like it's nearly like another form of weight training, in that the more you understand what you're trying to show or what the judges are looking for, you know, the better. Like once you understand what you're trying to show in your poses, you'll automatically get better at them. You know, because like a lot of the time people are like, why do I have to do this side pose? What are they checking for here? Like, you know, and it's like. So from the front, you know, they're looking for bikini or whatever way you pose. They're kind of looking for like, you know, like to see your kind of shoulder and lat width. And then what they're looking for is like, you know, like for like the waist to kind of dip in then, you know, and then they're looking for, if it's bikini, they're looking for a slight sweep in the quads, but it's like they're looking for that extreme from the front. And then from the side poses, they want to see like your shoulder and lat, width compared to your waist, and then it's like your hip or glute ratio compared to your waist as well. So it's nearly like kind of like an S bend they're looking for from the side. It's nearly like I think if I was to compare it to anything. So then it's like, you know, you do those 4 poses, and what it is it's obviously done by height category. So you know, they'll line everybody up in their 4 poses, and it's like whoever has the best, you know, the best ratios that they're looking for with the right condition will be the winner.
Okay.
You know, so it's like that's why you do those poses. Your mandatories are, you know, you have to do individual walks as well. And I used to be like absolutely in bits like nervous doing the individual walks, because I don't know why, but I didn't mind being on stage being compared with other people, but being on my own was what was the biggest killer for me. So it was like, just didn't want to be like center of attention. But funnily enough, I wish I knew like years before this, but most judging is always done from the comparisons. So in the comparisons with other people, and then it's like barely any judging is done for your individual routine. So it's like just you know, like once you learn your mandatory poses and you learn your quarter turns very, very well, then like, and don't stress too much about the individual eye walk, you know, because they're not really judging it, then you'll get a lot, you know, that's kind of
excellent stuff. So do you find the competition is getting stronger now, or is there more women getting into bodybuilding than when you first started?
Yeah, it's been like, sorry to start with no, it's one of the things I'm like. It's one of the brilliant things I've noticed since I started. I think, you know, more and more people have definitely gotten into it. Is the standard getting better as well? Absolutely. I think the standard in Ireland is really improving. It's, you know, it's getting to a stage where obviously there's a lot of Irish girls here that are, you know, being competitive internationally and everything, you know, and like. It's like, it's brilliant to see. Like it's like, you know, and I think one of the other things that is actually emerging in the last couple of years here in Ireland, just with other federations and stuff like that, is just like more flexibility for people. It's like, you know, there's you know, it's just more diversity. People are willing to try other federations. They're like, oh, I might be better suited to this one, and you're not you're not pigeonholed into competing with just, you know, like just in Ireland anymore either, because obviously because the sport has grown so much that there is that room to compete abroad if that's what you want to do and stuff. So I would say that definitely more women than ever are competing, and the standard is getting better and better every year.
And do you find that the majority of your competitors are nice and friendly, open conversation?
I think it's funny because everybody expects it to be a really, really competitive atmosphere and stuff like that. But like ultimately, you know, the only person that you are competing against is yourself. So you know, like after a while, of course, like, you know, I think when you don't understand the sport as much, you're like, oh, I want to be better than her. And, you know, like one of the things obviously that like, you know, the availability of Instagram has definitely done for bodybuilding is like, well, probably wasn't there like 20 years ago, was this constant comparing yourself to other people and their physiques and stuff. So it's like, you know, I would love to have actually competed in an era where you don't have that ability to compare yourself to other people, because it can be kind of like bodybuilding is very psychological, you know, and it's like when you start comparing your physique to somebody else's, and you know, like you're at the point as well where you kind of go a little bit crazy on, like when you're dieting, so you can't see. I don't want to say you can't see anything positive in your physique, but all you see is the flaws after a while. So then you start comparing yourself to other people, and you're like, "Oh, I'm useless." You know, you've kind of, in some ways, like you've nearly beaten yourself before you've even stepped on stage, because you're going in there thinking that everybody else is better than you, and you deserve to be there less than everybody else and stuff like that. So yeah, it's definitely comparing yourself to other competitors and stuff, not a helpful thing to do, but everybody does it at the same time, you know.
Yeah. And so where did so how did you actually start to overcome your shyness and have the ability to not care what others think? Where did I actually, like, it's a big step to go from being shy to eventually throwing yourself out on stage and learning as you go. But how did you actually start? What steps did you start to do in your head to kind of turn around and say, no, I'm going to just try and get on with this?
I think, you know, like somebody like said to me before, like probably, you know, the most appropriate statement I can say here is just like fake it till you make it, really. Because I definitely came into this from a position where I was, you know, like nervous to the point where I would say that in later shows judges probably remembered me as that girl who was really nervous and who had very little confidence. And I would say, like, you know, that once you have that opinion formed of somebody, you can't move past that, so you just automatically kind of don't really consider them even, because all you remember is this kind of nervous girl. But I kind of got to a point where I was like, I absolutely letting like my presentation and my like nerves and whatever are totally affecting my placements. And I'm, you know, like I look when you look nervous and you look stiff and you look like you're not enjoying yourself because you're so nervous, and you know, like people can only judge what they kind of see in front of them. So it doesn't matter what you look like, what you look like before you step on stage, you know. So it's like you're entirely responsible for how you present yourself. So I just had to get to a point where I was like, okay, you can either just like not compete anymore, or you know, because you're so nervous, or you can just basically put yourself in a position where you've just done so many shows that you're not nervous anymore. So I did quite a few of them, just I did a lot of them just to get to that point where it didn't faze me anymore. But I think as well, it was learning along the way that nobody that goes to a bodybuilding show is there to laugh. Nobody is there to, you know, nobody is like, yes, they are critiquing you, but they're critiquing your physique, you know. Like you go to shows and people are so serious, you know, everybody's picking their favorites, and you know, you kind of think you're a judge yourself, like, you know. And it's just getting to that stage where you probably look worse if you look awkward, and it's realizing that, you know. And and I think it's realizing that, you know, that like just like, you know, that like not caring and looking comfortable looks so much better than looking worried and awkward, you know. Like at the end of the day, like you work, like, you know, I said to myself, I'm like, I have absolutely killed myself to be here. Like, you know, it's been months and months of dieting, it's been, you know, it's been such a long process, and then you're just like, well, I'm absolutely fucked if I'm the reason that I don't do well in this. Like, you know, like, no, I'm just not letting this get the better of me, I suppose.
Well, it goes back to what you said. I mean, your coaches and your posing teachers can only give you the tools.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, when you're on stage, it's yourself that has to take ownership of that.
So it'll probably got to a point where, you know, you're just going around the house, like, you know, practicing your poses, like, kind of, you know, you nearly end up, for my last coach actually, and it was a huge thing that kind of brought along my posing, but I had to send video check-ins twice a week, and obviously you're not going, you end up reviewing the videos, you're like, no, that's crap, I'm going to do that video again. And like, you end up doing probably like about half an hour of posing before you send your check-in video. But like, if you have to do half an hour of posing twice a week for 24 weeks, you know, like, that all adds up massively. Like, you know, and it was definitely a feature. I had just become so it nearly feels like, I think they have to just feel like this, but you just have to get to a point where they feel like second nature to you, you know, where it's like, you don't even think about doing them, you just do them. You know, and I think because ultimately when you get nervous, you'll just revert to type in anything that you do, and you'll just do what you remember.
Okay.
You know, so you'll just so I think that was
to
probably
push yourself past that point.
Mm.
So when you're not training, have you ever managed to switch off after the last 4 years, or not let it take over completely?
I think, like, I obviously I've finished the season now and I'm in my off season, but it's the first time really that I'm kind of probably taking a little bit more downtime than I have in previous years. I think in the last 3 years I've done 11 or 12 shows or something like that, which is actually quite a lot, you know. Some people would only complete
12 shows you've done.
I think around 11 or 12 or something. I don't know, maybe 10, Jesus. 11 I think, which is, it's quite a lot in a short time frame. I haven't taken I think last year I took about 6 months off before I went dieting again, but usually I've only taken like 3 or 4 months. And I think it was like, never mind physically really, but it's actually just a lot of pressure on yourself mentally to just, constantly be in that mind frame of critiquing yourself and, you know, constantly just like striving to be like leaner and, you know, everything else. So it does become kind of hard to switch off. And I think one thing that I wish that somebody told me before I ever did any shows was that you'll probably never... Maybe this is maybe it's reversible eventually, but you probably never view yourself the same way again, because once you've had to look at yourself from a competitive, evaluate your body from a competitive perspective, like, it becomes very difficult, you know, like, to settle back into a normal physique. You know, it's like normal nearly isn't good enough anymore. You'll always wish, I think, I definitely find from my own personal perspective that I'm always seeking something more, like, you know, I always want to be leaner, or, you know, like, it's become like, it's definitely one of the most...
It's become a standard, hasn't it?
Yeah, you know, you say, like, so it's like, you expect yourself to be, like, you know, I suppose, you just want to be more than normal, and sometimes you're like, you know, you actually need a mental and physical break from dieting, from tracking food and everything else. So ultimately you do become, you know, like, more normal looking again, and that becomes like hard to accept or whatever. I think that's, you know, like, post show, that's one thing that, like, I think girls probably, you know, find difficult, and obviously men do as well, but I think from a female perspective especially, you know, it's like, when you've been in, like, you know, the shape of your life basically, and then obviously it's not sustainable to walk around that, you know, like, very low levels of body fat. Absolutely everything is affected, you know, like your mood, like, you know, your hormones, everything. So, you know, getting yourself back to a healthy body fat is important, but it's kind of like letting go of that level of control on your diet, because most of the time you are on very fixed food and everything, and it's like, it's letting go of that, and it's having to, like, accept yourself at a more, you know, like, more normal, and being okay with it and stuff, like, is kind of a difficult process. I think I've gotten better at it as I go along, but that initial stage of going, like the initial kind of first 4 to 6 weeks after stage, and you're going from absolutely tiny to like more normal is hard.
It's hard to take after putting the amount of hours in.
That's it. And you feel like you're letting yourself go, and you feel like other people are looking at you going, Jesus, she's let herself go, like, and you're like,
well, after reaching so high.
Yeah.
And so I think, suppose the older you get, the better you get at it, the more wise you become.
I suppose not even older, but just more like, like the more shows you've done and the more times that you've watched yourself go back to normal. I suppose it's just, but as well, like it's kind of it's learning to kind of appreciate yourself being that lean, and then learning to appreciate, like, I think you get a little bit kind of, it can get in your head a little bit, and you start to think that, with competing especially, that you become quite defined by your physique, because you're a competitor, that like people expect you to be in, expect you to be in great shape all year round and stuff. And I'm like, nobody expects anything. You put these expectations on yourself, and it's just, it's a funny one, really. I forget the original question now, so if you just revert me back to it. I had more to say on this.
It was going back to overcoming shyness, really. So, and actually how you managed to switch off. But what we'll do is I'm going to just ask, what is the future goals you have in the pipeline? What are they?
Okay. Do you want me to? All right. Future goals. I suppose we've already kind of touched on it. I would love to be in a position at some point in my life to try and win a professional card, but at the current moment in time, I've given 6 months of my life and 6 months of juggling pretty hectic career with preparation for the competition or whatever. So at the moment now, I'm just kind of enjoying a little bit of downtime, a little bit more flexibility, and just learning to listen to myself and rest and recover a little bit more than I normally would. But I would like to, I just want to, I suppose, put a bit more focus and a bit more time into my career at the moment, just for a couple of months. Well, not for a couple of months, but just I think in the next couple of years, I would like to would like to see competitively where I'm at. Would I be good enough to win a professional card? But I I feel like now that, I suppose, because I have won the intermediate class in Amateur Olympia, I can't do any class but the Open Pro Qualifier class now at the moment. So the standard for me is only going to get, like, the standard is really high from here on in. And it's like, if you win an Open class, you're going into an overall lineup. So you're going in, you have a chance of winning a pro card. But ultimately, what it means for me is that if you're good, like, to be good enough to win an Open class, you have to be good enough to be professional standard, potentially. And really, as I've said, like, muscle building, or, just like, refining your physique is a slow process. So I feel like taking 3 months off won't do me any good. I'm not going to be any better. And, that is one of the other things with bodybuilding. The ultimate objective is to be better than you were the last time you stepped on stage. So I don't feel like I'll do that in 3 months. To be honest with you, I don't even feel like I'll do it in 6. I would kind of like to revisit it after a year off and kind of see where I'm at, because I feel like it just gives me enough time to, like, mentally rest and recover, and just like, enjoy my training. Because I think, and people don't admit this enough, but you're so kind of worn out towards the end of, like, show preps and everything, that training isn't that enjoyable for you anymore. You're going through the motions of I just have to get this, I have to get in and get this done. And one of the reasons I wanted to do bodybuilding in the first place is because I absolutely love weight training. It's just, give yourself that time to kind of, to love it again, and, like, enjoy the process again. That it's not a chore, that's not something that you have to do. It's not. So it took me a couple of weeks to kind of recover from the London show, and kind of getting into a groove now where I enjoy it again. And kind of, it's mental, actually, because I dieted for so long. It's like, it's unbelievable the difference between going to the gym like not eating a lot of food to, you know, when you're actually fed and you're not hungry. I'm like, wow. But yeah, so it's just I would love to be in a position where I could compete and, you know, see if I was good enough to be professional. But at the same time, you know, like, what does it, you know, people are like, what does it mean? Would you, you know, does that mean you're a full-time bodybuilder? Of course not. It's just, it's more like, I think for a lot of people about winning a professional card, it's more about that journey of actually getting there and, you know, taking a physique from an amateur to a professional level. Like, you know, I don't think there's many professional IFBB pros that are really making a living from it, you know, where it's their sole source of income. Definitely not in Ireland anyway. You know, you need to offer something else, or you need to have something else. It's not your breadwinner.
And would you be open to starting to train others in the future?
So I feel, you know, this is a kind of a controversial one, because I think a lot of people, you know, because it's like, oh, I've competed, I've brought my body to a high level, I'm qualified to coach other people and stuff. And I mean, like, in some ways, yes, of course, you are, like, you know, you have like an intricate knowledge of training for your own body and your own nutrition or whatever that other people have kind of taught you. But again, you've probably refined the process yourself. But I think a lot of people get into, you know, the process of training other people without really respecting what a huge responsibility that is. You know, it's like, you know, it's like it's a huge responsibility to take somebody, you know, through, like, you know, a really long fat loss phase. And it's like, it's your responsibility to make sure that, you know, like, if you've dieted somebody very, very hard for like 12, 14, 60 weeks and they've got amazing results, that's great. But, like, you know, the problem with it is that, you know, it's the after for these people. It's like, you know, it's like a long term, like, I kind of feel like, really, from a coaching perspective, like, what your job needs to really should be ultimately is to create a lifestyle, or, you know, to be able to teach somebody to have it as a sustainable thing that, like, you know, somebody can implement throughout their whole life, and not for like 12-week diets or 14-week diets and stuff, you know. And it's like, I suppose as well, like, it's getting somebody to understand that, like, transformations and changing your life is a lot, like, it goes a lot further than physical transformations. It's like, you know, it's your mindset as well, and it's changing how you see how you feel about yourself. It's changing your attitude to yourself as well, because I think a lot of people obviously, you know, get into the gym and get into fitness probably from a perspective where they are, like, from a low self-esteem part, or like low body confidence and stuff like that. And it's like, I think, like, understanding that being happy within yourself, as well as being, like, you know, if you're not happy within yourself, then it doesn't matter what changes that you can make to yourself physically, you know, like, you need to work on your mindset just as much as you need to work on your physical appearance. So it's, I suppose it's kind of, would I love to train people? Of course I would, but I would, like, rather have a greater understanding, I think, of, you know, like, human psychology, even, you know, like the psychological impacts of dieting, and even like a greater understanding of nutrition and training and stuff. Basically, I think that it's a huge undertaking, but I would like to be more educated about it before I would do it. And I would actually like more experience. I think being able to get yourself in great shape, that's great, but, like, you know, that's you. And I think, like, you know, it's that's just one person. I think when you've got experience doing it with more, like, with a variety of people from a variety of different backgrounds and stuff, I think then you're qualified. People kind of think automatically, like, oh, competitors, like, you know, a competitor would make a great coach, but realistically, the only thing that you've proved as a competitor is that you can get yourself in shape, not other people. Okay.
Niamh, thanks for coming on. Huge fan of your work, and thanks for sharing your journey. Just tell everyone again how to get in touch with you. Okay, you can get in touch with me just on Instagram, and my username is just Niamh_Dro_. And guys, be sure to send their messages and follow. But once again, thank you very much for coming on. Thank you. It's been great. Thank you. Hi guys, I hope you enjoyed episode 3 of Getting Amongst It with Niamh Drohan. First, I'd just like to say, Niamh, thank you very much for joining me. And guys, if you do have any questions or queries, please feel free to message Niamh and check out her Instagram. Make sure to like, comment and subscribe to her channel where she puts out fantastic content. And like always, leave a like, comment and subscribe to Getting Amongst It. Thank you very much. See you next time.